What do you do when your children lie? Is there a distinction between a white lie and a big lie? Do you punish them? Do you tolerate it or do you ignore it? Today we're going to talk about the importance of integrity in mothers, in our homes, and what does that look like with little children? My name is January Donovan. I'm the founder of the Women's School, where we teach women how to flourish in every arena using mindset and skill-based training. So the story begins because in my own home, lying is a huge deal. It's not a mortal sin, but to me it feels like a mortal sin. But the truth is that I am so sensitive to the fact that in our culture today, lying seems to be normal. And I remember I worked on Capitol Hill for a congressman, and you kind of get shocked about the fact that we've normalized lying. And I remember having this conversation, I'm like, well, why would people lie? And they said, well, January, everybody lies. And I was thinking, wait, you just assume that everybody lies? I'm sure we've lied in our lifetime, but to assume that in politics everybody lies and that's just a way of life is a pretty warped way to think about our culture. That something so abnormal has become so normalized. And so I'm very sensitive in the fact that we are living in a culture that doesn't hold a high standard to truth. And not only that, everything is sort of in this pseudo subjective truth where like your truth and my truth. And so lying becomes sort of like things that you can bend. And so to me as a mother, I am conscientious when my children are skirting the truth and that I have to address it and that I address it pretty head on and that we nip things in the bud in our home because if you lie in those micro ways, then you're eventually, and you get away with it, then you eventually think you could lie in those macro ways, which is going to get you in trouble. People that lie eventually can't keep up with their lies. People that lie eventually lie to themselves. People that lie live a very hard life because to live a lie is a pretty hard life. You can't be peaceful. And to truly find peace that we all universally desire as a woman, we have to have integrity. We have to be brutally honest, and we can't skirt the truth, and we can't say, well, I was late because of traffic. No, I was late because it took me a long time to get out of bed. And we have to be so vigilant in our capacity to be a woman of integrity, even though we know we might not get caught. Like nobody's going to police us, right? If we say, well, it was traffic and nobody's going to have a camera on, the traffic light, then you can say that and nobody's going to say, well, she's lying. But the problem is that when we are not honest, people start to doubt us. And then it's something little. And then we lose opportunities instead of saying, you know what, give it to her. I know I can trust her. Now we know, give it to someone else we can trust. And that's just human nature. We clearly want to be around people that we trust. We don't want to hand things to people and give things to people we don't trust. And yet we've lowered the standard of honesty. So where does that all begin? Well, it begins with number one, a mother's ability to be also a woman of integrity, to be brutally honest. Our capacity to make sure that we are honest and that we believe in this high integrity that I am an honest woman and that you can trust that I will not lie to you. So it really begins with me being able to look at my children and say, I will not lie to you. Yeah, and that you can trust that I will not lie. I will not lie in the small things and I will not lie in the big things. And it really begins with that level of conviction that if I'm going to hold you to a standard of honesty and integrity, then I better hold that for myself as well, that it is true for myself as well. And so it's important that we understand the magnitude and the layers of consequence when a woman is incapable of speaking the truth. So where does it begin? It begins with our level of integrity. Why? Because we can't hold our children accountable if we are not holding ourselves accountable, because they're going to quickly say, well, you lie, mom. So we have to be able to say, no, I don't lie, and you know that, and you can trust that. Sometimes when I say this is where I tell my children the distinction between lying and not always honoring my word. I am a woman of my word, but I get myself in trouble because sometimes I say I'll be home at 4:30 and I don't manage my time well, or something happens at the office and I'm like, oh, I'm not home at 4:30 like I said I would. That's different. That's obviously being, it's still connected to being a woman of integrity. I need to do a better job making sure I manage my time so I can honor my word. But lying is intentionally withholding the truth, intentionally skirting what we know to be true. And that is different than being a woman of our word. However, the reason why I'm addressing it, it is connected to being a woman of our word, because the more we do not become a woman of our word, the more we are able slipping into the slippery slope of sort of lying because we actually didn't keep the promise that we actually told ourselves, right? So I think that's very important, is to, number one, create a self-image and a discipline of a mother that is brutally honest, that our children can trust, so that we can hold them accountable. So what does this look like with our children? Well, there has to be, now the second part is our children, there has to be a standard in our own home that lying is a huge deal. There's no such thing as a white lie, and there's no such thing as skirting the truth, and there's no such thing as ignoring lies. Like, if you lie a little bit, we're going to bring that to surface and we're not going to pretend that it's not a big deal. And so it's a standard that in my own house, my children know that when they lie, they're going to be held to they're going to be held accountable. And I have a 17-year-old, and all of them, because we've all endured our childhood where we're trying to figure out how to be truthful, right? We've all lied. And the goal is that we raise adults that are a man and woman of integrity. So yes, children lie because they're trying to figure out, but that's when we teach them. And so my children all have written scripts. So in my house, we do this thing called scripting, which means that I give them a script on what to say, or a self-image, so that they rewire their brain, literally, like you're learning a language, right? You're, through the process of repetition, creating neurological wirings in your brain. That's what works in my house, and I believe it works because the repetition allows them to create those neurological connections like you would if you were learning a language. So scripting is a huge part of my home, to a point that I have a script drawer, right? And so when my children lie, like when my children need to clean up for themselves, or maybe they're not being kind, they usually whip the script book and there's 50 scripts. I choose to see the good in the situation. I say no to myself, right? And these are scripts that I teach them to talk to themselves. That's what we do in the women's school. We have thousands of scripts because ultimately language really defines our perception. And so it's so important. But lying, so I have a 50 standard scripting and 100, but lying is a bare minimum 1,000 scripts. And the reason why I think that's important, because it's the foundation of our relationship, it has to be based on trust. And if we can't be truthful, then it's going to be a really hard life. So I make a huge deal. And what's interesting is that all my children have written not all, I'm sorry, my first 4 children, they've written 1,000 scripts. As a matter of fact, one of my children just recently just wrote his second 1,000 scripts. And my older child and say, you know what? I actually remember writing my first 1,000 scripts. And it actually worked, Mom, because every time I think of lying, I think of 1,000 scripts. And so it's not so much that they're, and obviously it's rewiring. I am honest all the time. My husband has this phrase, honest all the time, ABH. But it's more of creating the distinction between sort of a behavior that's like, okay, you need to be kinder, you need to, obviously those are important, but it's like the massive shift of like 1,000 scripts, and you're basically explaining to them that the gravity of the situation is important, that not all sins are equal, and that there's things that are really foundational. And if you can't get the foundation right, it's going to crumble on you. And why am I sharing this with you? Because I think that we've normalized lying in our school system and our industries and our politics. And what we need to do is to stop that level of white lies, small lies in our own homes, so that they have a fierce level of integrity and a standard that lying is just non-negotiable, that we hold them to a high standard when they're still little, when we can still form them, when we can still really exercise our ability to lead them, because eventually they're going to go on their own. And if they're going to go on their own, then they're going to graduate out of your house and they don't think that lying is a big deal, then we have prepared them to have difficult relationships. We've prepared them to have difficult opportunities, because who wants to hire a liar? Of course, no one wants to hire somebody who can lie unless you're an immoral person. And immoral people live a very difficult life, because can you imagine just the headache and the roller coaster of things that are immoral, and when you're not happy and you're doing things that actually did not lead you to flourish and to achieve your highest good? That's a hard life. And what we want our children is to live a moral life, because ultimately that's what's going to make them happier individuals. That's going to make them flourish in their relationships and their careers and in their dreams and who they are, and allow them to achieve the greatness that they were created and called for. And so the integrity that is necessary has to start from our own homes. And so no white lies. There's no little lies. It's just a lie, right? And so bringing it to our attention is so important. And that the take home point here is that lying is a big deal, and that we have to make it a big deal as mothers, and that we have to make it a big deal by modeling for them that mom does not lie. Mom is always honest, and you can trust her word. And that is the level of expectation that I have for you. And we all collectively as women raise the standard by that level of integrity, by owning our own capacity to be brutally honest, then that's how we shift culture together. And that's how we raise the standard in our culture. We're not going to sort of raise it through, politically. We have to raise it individually. And to know how to be truthful requires formation. Formation, as we define in the Women's School, is the development of our mindset and our skill set to achieve the design of what you want. If you want to be a kind person, if you want to be an honest person, then you have to form your mindset and develop the right skill, right, to then become the person who's honest. And so that's what we're doing. We're scripting, and we're creating the discipline necessary to achieve that design. And ultimately, it's because we want to flourish, to be happy. That's what Aquinas tells us, is that ultimately that's what we long for, is to actually find that deep interior fulfillment, not the temporary fulfillment. And so the importance of developing these skills is simply a long-term, I would say, strategy to help our children achieve the good that they deeply desire. I hope that serves you. And if it serves you, please subscribe to our channel, as we offer you more skill-based training so that we can replace, this false idea of womanhood in our culture that's lowered the standard, and truly raise the bar for humanity and become the nurturers of humanity, and form ourselves to become, I would say, this, to raise the standard for our children, to raise the standard for our communities. And the only way we could do that is through training. So you can learn more about the Women's School if you go into our womenschool.com and join our New Woman Masterclass. But also, if you're interested in mentoring women, you can also join our mentor group, or you want to be a coach, so that together we can be the solution to all the crazy ideologies in our culture today. And the only way we can do that is our own ownership of our own formation. I hope that serves you, and I will see you again soon.